perhaps to simplify and to round up why. First, she rose from the ranks. She's career. Second, she's female. But it's not just because of that, because she is bright and highly educated, I'd say brilliant. And fourth, she has the discipline as required of the DFA and all public servants. And five, she understands not just policies and the law, but culture as well. And she's been very supportive of all our advocacies, not just because it's my advocacy, but because these are shared advocacies that we must have with other countries as well. And I refer to climate and culture and multilateralism and minilateralism and ASEAN centrality, which brings me to my questions. The issues of multilateralism and minilateralism and ASEAN centrality were discussed in the Shangri-La Dialogue, not of late, but maybe 2 years ago, when there was, and this is the International Institute for Strategic Studies based in the UK, and there's a Shangri-La Dialogue every June where I was invited as a speaker 2 years ago. Of course, I'm not the head of state. It's usually the heads of state who are invited, but I was honored to be a speaker there 2 years ago. And the subject matter was Asia-Pacific minilateralism and ASEAN centrality, and how are we able to balance that amidst, definitely we cannot, and it's really old school to think about the world as East and West. And we know that all these geopolitical landscape has been changing, especially because of flashpoints in different parts of the world. But where is the DFA, Madam Secretary, insofar as multilateralism is concerned, insofar as Asia-Pacific minilateralism and ASEAN centrality? How do we balance this if they are considered not aligned with each other? And will ASEAN centrality be a subject matter perhaps in our ASEAN chairship next year? Because you mentioned the subject matters, and rightly so, which will include climate in the West Philippine Sea. But would ASEAN centrality be a subject matter, since it was very importantly included in the International Institute for Strategic Studies in the Shangri-La Dialogue of 2 years ago? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your initial statements. And in regards to your question, I go to your third question, ASEAN centrality. I think ASEAN centrality is a very, it's the underlying element of what ASEAN is all about. Since the years past when ASEAN, we are now what, 52 or 53 years old, ASEAN, but it is ASEAN centrality that has really given a prominence to ASEAN as an organization, a regional organization. And therefore, it has been ingrained to the many ASEAN member states that for initiatives, for actions, for projects to prosper, it should be the principle of ASEAN centrality should be there. So with regards to your question, ma'am, if Your Honor, if ASEAN will be an issue, it is no longer an issue because it is in the very, very depths of what ASEAN is all about. And therefore, in our chairship in 2026, it is ASEAN centrality that will be governing our moves and our actions during our chairship.
That, Mr. Chair, Madam Incoming Secretary, now, how do we balance ASEAN centrality and multilateralism as a traditional term that's been used, and minilateralism of the Asia-Pacific? Or does this all align? Because, of course, multi and minilateralism are entirely different, but what is the DFA's position regarding Asia-Pacific, or perhaps let's broaden it into Indo-Pacific minilateralism? Are we exercising it? Are we taking advantage of minilaterals already? Or are we still doing all the multilateral negotiations? Is there any move towards minilateral initiatives that could align with our ASEAN centrality position?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would say that, first of all, the Philippines is a strong believer of multilateralism, of course, at the bigger and the grander scale. However, on a minilateral basis, there are certain countries that can align themselves. But again, if you say, how is it connected with ASEAN centrality? As a member of ASEAN, it's still a principle that we abide. In other words, to a certain extent, multilateralism, minilateralism, and ASEAN centrality can be aligned, and we try to adhere to that concept.
For example, we are all in ASEAN, but perhaps there are interests for the Philippines that may not be aligned with Laos. So as an example, and I will not state which issues, because we know the countries that are perhaps friendlier with Laos, and that could be the aggressor country that could be threatening us in the West Philippine Sea issue. And while we want ASEAN to be solid in terms of decisions we make, we know that it's broken sometimes. We're not as solid as we wish we were because of other powers supporting other ASEAN neighbors. I'm not certain if this will be discussed in our chairship. I don't like to belabor the point. So while it seems like multilateralism and minilateralism are opposing views, but perhaps it is correct in saying that there are, on certain issues, minilaterals are essential as long as we believe that it is our national interest and ASEAN centrality that should prevail. Okay.
Ma'am, actually, you're correct, but I just to react to what you said, ASEAN member states have different affiliations, but the affiliations it's present for all of us ASEAN member states. However, the ASEAN centrality concept is being adhered to because that's the only thing that can gel these ASEAN member states. In fact, I mean, just to give you that notion that we are more than 50 years old. I mean, ASEAN as a regional organization, but there has been no major conflict that has happened in this region. Of course, there are certain issues every now and then, but I guess we point out to the ASEAN centrality, the principles of ASEAN, non-interference, consensus building, and so forth. These are the principles that has been it has been ingrained. I would like to use that word again, and that makes us a very strong organization.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification that ASEAN centrality has been ingrained, if not mainstreamed, in how we think, how policies are made among us ASEAN nations. Yes. I proceed to what happened, was it a week ago when the United Nations was not able to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, in Palestine. Yes. Because of the lone dissenting vote, which is the United Nations. I feel very strongly about this, and may I know the Philippines, the DFA's stand on the genocide that's continuing in Gaza.
Basic
Yeah.
elements of the Philippine position towards Gaza is we are believer of a two-state principle. That is, we have been adhering to that, and that's even the reason why we have a Palestinian embassy here for more than so many years, because we adhere to that two-state principle. Second is we, again, look into this issue in the Middle East, that it should be through peace and dialogue. It should be governed by the diplomacy and peaceful resolution. In this particular situation of what you have just mentioned, Your Honor, the UN has its own unique views. Although in the Security Council, of course, there is such a thing as a very strong veto power. I think it has now gone to the General Assembly. Well, there will be discussions. I think I'm not very sure about the procedure, but if there is one country which has the veto power, then it will cascade down to the UNGA, and discussions will be made. And there we will have the opportunity to speak on our position on Gaza?
Allow us to be enlightened on the process, because the U.S. was the lone dissenting vote. That's why no ceasefire was secured. But it will now go to the UNGA, to the General Assembly. How many votes do we need to secure a ceasefire? Because last year, there was already a ceasefire. Then the ceasefire lapsed, right? That was because of the vote in UNGA, in the General Assembly, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? So when is the vote for a ceasefire in the UNGA, and how many votes are needed? Is it a majority or two-thirds?
I'll be very honest. I don't know exact
Maybe
procedure.
Neo is here?
Neo,
Yes.
person can respond to that, please.
Ambassador Almuhela is here. Just if you know, how many votes are needed for us to secure a permanent or unilateral ceasefire in Palestine, in Gaza? And we had it before. We voted. I remember the Philippines first voted no, and I was so disappointed. I cried. And the second vote, the Philippines voted yes, and there was a ceasefire.
Yes.
And there will be another vote soon. Is that correct?
Good morning, honorable members of the CA, ma'am. Yes, following this, the failure of the UNSC to have a decision on a ceasefire, the UNGA will take a vote on a resolution, and most likely it's going to be adopted by a vote. But the difference between Security Council decisions and UNGA decision is that the UN Security Council decisions are enforceable. The UNGA has no enforcement effect.
Us no ceasefire, and even if it's brought to the UNGA, if they get a majority vote, then it's only a recommendation.
Yes.
Or yes, the views of the majority.
Yes, ma'am. But to elaborate on our position on the humanitarian situation, 2 weeks ago we issued a statement addressing the decision of a certain country to prevent the operations of UN humanitarian action in Gaza. We called for the centrality of UN to provide humanitarian assistance in Gaza. I think many are aware that a certain country has prevented the UN system to lead the provision of this assistance. And also in February, the Philippines submitted a position on an ICJ proceeding questioning the legality of the decision of that country to prevent the UN ARWA from continuing its mandate as the sole and lead provider of assistance in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Thank you for that, Ambassador Almuela. You're correct. Even the headquarters of the UN ARWA has been bombed, and even hospitals, and it's truly heartbreaking and sometimes frustrating that we can't, and I feel helpless that we can't do much except convey it in our statements. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll leave the topic because it could be forever.
Or Mr. Chair, with the indulgence of
Yes.
Senator Lauren, just a quick addition to what, because if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Lauren. I just want to join wholeheartedly in the line of questioning and manifestations of Senator Lauren. And it's funny to say this now because we are vying for a non-permanent seat on the Security Council. But in the years forward, I think our committee would appreciate knowing what the DFA is thinking and proposing about reforming of the UN system, the fate of that Security Council. I mean, why should any one country have veto power? Why should a council have enforcement power and not the General Assembly? That is the opposite of democracy that is supposed to be upheld by the United Nations. And lastly, the horrific situation that Senator Lauren is pointing out on the ground. Why should any one country be allowed to bar or even commit hostile actions against humanitarian activities that are the barest minimum of compliance even with international humanitarian law? So as to make that situation impossible, they are part of an armed conflict, they are conducting the genocide that Senator Lauren mentioned, and then they